Hello and welcome to Tank and AFV News. My name's Tom, and today I'm going to be talking about 172 scale tank and armored vehicle models. As anybody who watches my videos has probably noticed, or at least the videos where I've got the camera aimed at myself, behind me usually is a case full of books and then another bookcase that is full of little tank models. Now these are all 172 scale tanks, and I've been collecting for about a good 10 years. And most of the stuff on the shelf is stuff I sort of had bought with that. I was really say that first 5 years of collecting, and then for the next several years I was really focused more on the website and on then a little later making videos and purchasing books. So I kind of let the model collecting fall by the wayside, and also had stopped building kits in that scale from scratch. Partly because I just model building was never I was never very good at it, and 172 scale I don't think my eyes can deal with it anymore. It's too hard to see, frankly. So these days I'm really just interested in the pre-built stuff. So whether it's pre-built plastic or die cast, and also since I've got so many, I've sort of been looking to fill in a lot of more sort of little sort of nooks and crannies in the collection. So much not sort of the most famous vehicles, but stuff that's a little more obscure. So this last year I sort of got back into it, buying some stuff, and I thought I kind of went through and pulled out all the stuff I'd bought in the last year, since last October, and figured it'd be fun to sort of run through it on camera and talk about it and talk a little bit about the different brands. I am not an expert at all. I don't follow modeling news so much. I just look, at the different vendors and see what's available. So everything I know about the vendors is just based on my own experience of dealing with their product. It's not from reading things. So there's probably people who know a lot more details than I do. This is just from the purchaser's experience. Think of it as that. So I will say which brand each model is, and sort of give my comments on the particular quality of that brand. But that's all I can really say about it. So I've got these in sort of the order of which I purchased them, which means nothing to no one other than myself. But it just made sense, as I made the list. So we will start with a vehicle that's it's certainly not an uncommon vehicle at all. In fact, this is one sort of pretty important vehicle that was missing from my collection, and it is, of course, the MCV-80 Warrior. This one is supposedly done up in the colors of British 7th Armored Brigade of Iraq, 2003. And this one is from a company called Americom, and it is die-cast. Of course, even the die-cast ones, I mean, all the little detailed bits are plastic. It's not like any of these are completely solid metal. And Americom, I don't know much about them. The quality seems to be on par with some of the other sort of die-cast brands like D'Agostini or Altaia, and I sort of suspect a lot of them. It's probably just the same dies and whatnot being used. Just either they get sold to another company or rebranded under another name. But this one was on sale, so it was pretty cheap, and I was glad to add it to the collection because I did not have one. And it's kind of, like I say, along with the Bradley, it is the other major infantry fighting vehicle that's seen a lot of use in places like the Middle East, or at the end of the Cold War in Europe, because obviously Britain, the Anglo-American alliance, lives on to varying degrees. This next one is, I'm sort of surprised. This one is Eaglemoss. At least that's what I'd thrown out the boxes of these long ago, and I went back in my email to look at sort of the orders I'd put in, and they said which company. Eaglemoss is Russian stuff, and it's generally not particularly great quality. And this one is the good thing about the Eaglemoss stuff is they're all really cheap. And so this is a Leopard 2 A5. Now I have an A4 that I got from Dragon, which is really nice, and I have an A6 that I built myself years ago. So I only bought this one because it was on super sale. But all in all, it's not bad looking at all. It's a pretty decent representation of the Leopard 2 A5. And I don't mind having multiple models of the Leopard because the different versions are visually distinctive, and it's a very important tank in the modern world. Next up is this guy right here. This one's from Dragon. This one is mostly plastic from what I can tell, and of course is the M103 heavy tank. I was pretty excited when I saw this one come on the market because nobody really made an M103 pre-built in this scale before. And this is probably the most expensive one that I bought. and this one was a little bit of a disappointment. There's a couple things. Number one is it's got droopy gun barrel. If you can see there, it sort of droops down. The bigger issue is that immediately upon buying it, the little tabs that hold the turret on broke. So this one, you try to rotate the turret, and it just broke off. And you can hear how tight that fit is, so no wonder those little tabs broke. So the vehicle looks great, everything's great, except for, you know, those sort of quality control issues, which is sort of surprising, because in the past I got models from Dragon, and they're fantastic. But still, just glad to have an M103, because it's just a cool vehicle. Next up, this one, according to my notes, is from D'Agostini. And this is by far one of the nicest D'Agostinis that I've seen, and it is the Japanese Type 10. So a very modern tank, probably the most modern tank in my collection, one of the most modern tanks in the world, really. No elevation on the gun, really. That's, you know, gun elevation's kind of, most of the models don't have it, or if they do, it's not even the full range. So I don't really expect it, but otherwise, this one's a really nice looking representation of the T10. You know, and unfortunately, I don't know a ton of details about this vehicle, partly because it's new and partly because there's just not a lot written in English on Japanese tanks, unfortunately. Moving along, these next two are kind of a pair, and these were both from Dragon. They're both ones I'd seen around a while on the internet, and I didn't buy them because I didn't feel like I really needed them, and they were really expensive, and then it seemed the prices dropped. And once they got really cheap, I decided to buy them, and I got them, and I was a little disappointed with the quality again from Dragon. And these are the VK02P. So Dr. Porsche's Tiger II entries. This one is the V, I believe. And so a couple issues with this model. The paint colors are just a little brighter and more vibrant than they should be. And the gun barrel, that's not elevation and depression. That's just, it's not mounted to the turret well. It's just sort of sagging. It's probably going to break off, and I'm going to have to glue it on. So even though I got these at a discount, disappointing from Dragon. And then, of course, the same vehicle, but in the H configuration, the turret in the rear. You know, so essentially it's sort of like the Ferdinand tank destroyer, but with a turret in terms of sort of the mechanics on this vehicle. Of course, neither of these vehicles ever went to production. They were just prototypes because the German army of World War II selected the Henschel. This one's a little better. The gun it doesn't move at all, but at least the turret does. But again, I had issues with the tabs breaking off. So this one, again, just like my M103, you know, the turret tabs, because it's just so tight, whoever put it on there before it went in the box, it just, you know, you go to turn it and I don't remember if this one snapped or if they were just gone before I even got it. So, you know, Dragon needs to sort of get their game together, I think. Next up is the Panzerspalwagen AB43203i. So, of course, this is actually the Italian Auto Blinda armored car. This one is from Americom. It is shiny. It does not look like a model so much as more of a toy, because it is just the colors are so bright and vibrant. But it was really cheap. That's why I ordered it. And, you know, it's such an oddball little item, this Italian armored car that the Germans put into service. And, you know, it's a shame that you can get it in German colors, but there wasn't one available in Italian. Also from Americom is this one. Or no, I'm sorry, this one's Atlas. Somwa S35. This one I was glad to get. I had an S35 plastic model I put together. It was from a Greek model making company. It was really not very good quality. This one's better. It's die cast. It's definitely got a lot of weight to it. The detail's pretty decent. The paint job is quite colorful, but that's appropriate for the French stuff. And, you know, it's a fun little vehicle. I always like the S35. Just French 1940 vehicles are interesting, not because they were particularly good, but because, you know, French stuff is French. It's the French copy no one, and no one copies the French. And then here we have from Model Collect, which company I know very little about. The only thing I have in my collection of post-Soviet Russia, and that is this T80 MS. And Really no gun depression on it, but the detail is really nice. The rest of the model's solid. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart or lose pieces or anything. So yeah, this one's fun. Glad to add that one to my collection. Because the Soviet part of my collection is the one that is the most spotty in terms of quality, in terms of the actual quality of the models themselves. Next up, this is an interesting one, and this one I was very pleased with because it was fairly affordable. It is such an odd little item, and it's a nice quality model. It is the Soviet T-50 light tank, a vehicle that did not see widespread production. It's a very interesting vehicle, and in some ways a vehicle that was maybe a bit ahead of its time, or at least incorporated a lot of the current advances in tank design in the early part of World War II, but it just didn't really fit the need of the Soviet Army in 1941-42, so they never really put it in full-scale production, but it's really nice to have a little model of it. And that one is from a company called Arsenal, which I don't know. One other Arsenal model I got is this little T-26. So again, this is a very early model T-26. It's got the dual turrets. I don't think probably anybody will ever make a Vickers 6-ton in this scale, so this is as close I'm going to get. And it's really pretty similar. It's got the dual turrets. You know, the only difference between this and a Vickers 6-ton or even like a Polish 7TP at this scale in terms of the amount of detail you're going to get is like the machine gun barrels and maybe a few other little things. So this is just sort of represents all those vehicles in my collection, at least to me. So when I want to do it, you know, because a lot of times I'll pull these out and sort of put them next to other things to kind of get a size comparison and just sort of think about them. So nice to have something that represents the sort of the Vickers 6-ton family of vehicles, let me say, even if it's in the T-26 format. Next up is APC. This one is from Eaglemoss. And like I said, the Eaglemoss stuff's usually pretty bad quality, and this one is no exception. It's shiny. It's got these weird little pieces. The road wheels are all one piece with little connectors. The turret here, when it rotates, that lower part of the turret that you see rotating right there, that's supposed to be part of the hull. But, you know, who else makes an MTLB APC? You know, I don't think anybody does at this scale. And again, this one was like $10 or something. It was super cheap. So I said, why not? It's an interesting vehicle, and it's one of those vehicles that's probably been made in, you know, substantial numbers, but just never gets much attention from people that care about armored personnel carriers. Next up, another Eaglemoss one, and this is again sort of showing the Eaglemoss stuff based on foreign vehicles is almost nicer looking than stuff on the Russian ones, because this one's not shiny. The paint job's pretty good, and it is the Italian Centauro. Sort of, not sure what they consider this, a tank destroyer, fire, you know, armored support vehicle, but it's, you know, an 8x8 wheel chassis with a, I believe this one's the 105mm gun. I think they make a 120 version of this as well. I don't really, haven't studied modern Italian vehicles very well, but this one again was cheap, and I thought, oh, that's a cool thing. I'll add that to the collection. Next up, from Eaglemoss again, and this one's actually pretty decent looking, but this is the American M548 cargo hauler, so not a tank or an APC, but still an interesting vehicle. And I thought, oh, yeah, I'll add that to the collection. It looks fun. Again, reasonably affordable. I am a bargain shopper. So, yeah, this one, can't complain at all. Next up is a funny one, because this one on the vendor's website said M4A1 Sherman, British. And I looked at the picture and I said, well, that is not an M4A1. I think anybody who knows Shermans will look at that and say, that is an M4. Just a plain M4. And what makes it interesting is 105mm gun. And this one is from Atlas. I have a ton of Shermans. I probably have about 8 different Sherman tanks in 172 scale. So why did I buy this one? Particularly because the quality on it's not as good as some others. Well, because it's got the 105mm gun. Nobody else makes one that's got the 105 gun. And the funny thing is it wasn't even advertised as that on the website. But I looked at the picture and said, that's the mantlet for the 105. And it is just basic, your basic M4. What's interesting is that You know, you can see it's the large hatch with that the single plate front hull. Uh, as far as M4s, the only ones that had that were 105. So there, as I believe, there were no 75 millimeter M4 basic M4s with that front hull design. So kind of interesting tank. Quality on this isn't great. In fact, one of the bogies is about to fall off on the back here, so I have to be careful with it. But you know, like I said, I like to keep Sherman tanks are a particular point of interest of mine, so it's fun to have representations of them on my shelf. As far as you know, goofy little models, but they were really cheap. This one was again another one that was under $10, and it is the BA-20, and it's like a little Matchbox car, if even that quality. But you know, it's tiny. The only thing that moves are just this little turret on the top and the wheels. You know, something to put on the shelf. Next up is probably the one that was second most expensive after the M103. And this is the only one I have here today that I bought from Hobbymaster. Hobbymaster is probably overall the best quality of anybody who makes diecast 172 stuff. Everything I've gotten from them for the most part is really good, and this one's quite nice. The gun elevates, the turret turns. This one, it's in Taiwanese markings. You know, they made a few different versions. This was the only one I could find that was still available because most of them all sold out. The detail's nice. Oh, here, let me slip the turret off so you can actually see, because they actually even bothered, you know, to recreate the turret basket a little bit, and the turret floor inside. So that level of detail, which is pretty nice for a scale this small. So expensive, but worth the price. And trying to get that on sideways. Oh, let's get that on right. There we go. You got to be careful with these. You don't want to pull the turrets off too often, or you'll break those little tabs. And no, that's not what I did with those dragons I was complaining about earlier. Those broke before I even pulled them out of the box. Next up, this was one of my favorites I purchased. Not because it's great quality, it's Eaglemoss, so it's not, but it's a T-35. This thing is ridiculous. It is so big. It's hard to sort of say. Quality-wise, it's not great. None of the turrets turn, even the top one, which is like, why can't this one rotate at least? This front barrel gun is bent. But, you know, it doesn't matter because it's just awesome to have a T-35. It's such a massive vehicle and such a weird vehicle. And I found this one for a reasonable price and was very glad to add it. It is stupid long. I put it next to my 172 scale mouse, and this thing's quite a bit longer than even the mouse, to give you an idea of how big this thing was. So, I'll let you in on a little secret. Sometimes if I get a book on a tank, while I'm reading the book, I'll take my model and put it like on the table next to me, just as reference. So when I read the Francis Pullum book, T-35, I now have something to have next to me while I'm reading. All right, next, this was one that, you know, I don't have the box. I threw the boxes out in the trash, and maybe I should have kept them because I'm not sure the company. I went back, and it's not listed on the vendor page anymore. But the sort of the notes from when I ordered it said Model Toy Soldier. So I don't know if that's a brand or not, but it is a KV-85. So this is a fairly rare vehicle. Like, they didn't produce a lot of these. KV-85 was, they took the KV tank, made a new turret with 85mm gun. The turret is essentially the turret that would end up on the IS tanks. I mean, there's some differences, I'm sure, but you know, if you look at it, it's pretty obvious. It's essentially the same turret. So the IS-1, which had the 85mm gun, it's going to be very similar to turret. What's on this, just a different hull. So, but this is the KV-85. You know, a tank that it's a pretty good tank in a lot of regards, but it's just, you know, the problem is by the time this thing's in service, the 85mm gun's no better than what they're starting to put on the medium. It's expensive, it's heavy, and they, you know, come with the IS, which is just a better design all in all. So the KVs are interesting. It's one of those tanks. It's a pretty good tank, but it's just never as good as some of the other vehicles in the Soviet stables of vehicles, and so kind of always gets overshadowed. But really nice, not a bad quality model at all. Looks good, seems solid. I was really glad to add that one to the collection. As far as Eaglemoss models, like I said, Eaglemoss, not very good quality stuff in some of the Russian vehicle stuff is the worst. This is kind of bottom of the barrel in terms of quality. It looks like a toy. It's shiny, like it almost looks like raw plastic in some ways. But nobody else makes a T-44, and it was cheap. So this will exist on my shelf because I will not have any other T-44s for a while probably, and this fills that niche because, you know, T-44 is an important vehicle. It doesn't really capture the public imagination because it's really sort of a transitional stage between T-34 and T-54. But hey, you know, like I said, for cheap, and you know, the good thing is it's in scale. It's not like there's anything glaringly wrong other than just the quality's not great, but so be it. Next up, this one is from Warmaster, which is the only Warmaster one I had in this particular thing. And the Warmaster stuff I usually find is pretty nice, except that sometimes it's just a little tall. I don't know what it is. Their suspensions seem to be just a little bulkier than they should be, so I don't know if this one is or not. I don't have another AMX-13 to compare it to, but this is the French AMX-13, which is a cool vehicle. And nobody makes a 1/72 scale version of it other than this one. It rotates. The gun does not elevate, but seeing as this was an oscillating turret, that'd be pretty hard to do on a scale model like this, so I can forgive them. So this one, this was one of my favorites of all these because it is a well-made kit. You can feel the weight to it. It's die cast, and it's such an interesting vehicle that I had never really put a lot of thought into. In fact, it actually inspired me to buy the Images of War AMX-13 book that came out last year. As far as I know, the first book in English to focus exclusively on that tank, which is sort of strange because it's one of the most popular tanks of the 1950s and 60s in terms of certainly probably France's most successful export tank, you know, barring maybe the older Renault FT. So yeah, AMX-13 interesting. And then last but not least, this one I got just a couple days ago. This is one I bought on eBay from an independent vendor. Look at this guy. It is Object 279. This is a completely weird vehicle. You know, never went past prototype stage. Soviet heavy tank with 4 tracks, 130 millimeter gun. This was the box said Panzerkampf was the name of the brand. It's a nice model. The gun elevates, turret rotates well, everything looks good, the quality's good. You know, the paint job's super simple, but you know, this was something that never went past prototype stage, so you know, that's appropriate. Like, it never got issued to units, so there's no unit markings to recreate, really. And it's just fantastic. It's such a bizarre vehicle, and you know, the fact that I live in a world where somebody bothered to make a 1/72 scale kit of this and sell it pre-built makes me very happy. That said, and if I ever do any video I do of this nature, I'm going to keep saying this. Nobody makes a 1/72 scale pre-built model of the M47 patent tank, a tank that the United States produced several thousand of and saw service in several nations. That's a travesty. Somebody needs to make an M47 so I can have one for my collection because my U.S. collection is not complete. So, again, somebody, please make an M47. All right. Other than that, that's all the stuff I bought this year. I hope this was at least marginally interesting to somebody. But hey, you know, nobody's making you watch. So this is what I do on Friday nights when it's very boring and too hot to do anything else. All right. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.